Hey there, welcome back to I'm pretty sure I can fix that. So today I'm actually looking to go through something relatively simple that you might know how to do if you've already been in QuickBooks Desktop. In fact, you probably know how to do it if you're a bookkeeper or accountant in QuickBooks Desktop. But it's just the general, how do I make a general journal entry? And then how can I see the back end of other transactions that I didn't make a manual journal entry for? And basically the accounting end of it, right? When I'm in the check register, how can I see, well, what's the other side of that entry? Um, yeah, again, another super easy one, but it's a basic understanding that you need to become a novice in QuickBooks Desktop. And you're going to have to become a novice, right, to become an expert. So, we have to use Maslow's hierarchy to slowly build up our skill set. So, I'm hoping to go through a pretty simple one. Might not be for everybody, but still a necessary reference. So, the way that we create manual journal entries in QuickBooks is we can go to Company and then make general journal entries. So from a high level, the way that this works is this is where you are truly creating right your manual journal entry. Pretty, simple in terms of accounting. It's a journal entry, it doesn't change no matter what software you're in. But this line is where you're going to set your account. Here's your debit side, your credit side, any memo you would like to go with it. If there's a name that you want to assign with it, be a customer or a vendor, is this a billable transaction? And if you want to track it to a class. So up here we have our date. The date is the transaction date that it's going to post for. Your entry number. So this is essentially your journal entry source. So this is where you would retain that cadence, and you can check off if it's an adjusting journal entry or not. Essentially, these two are for your own general tracking purposes, but definitely helpful to use from the beginning. So up here we have the basic search functions of find a journal entry, make a new journal entry, save it, delete it, or you can void it. You can create a copy of your journal entry. Let's say you want to take a copy from one of prior months ago and you just want to edit it for current date. You would hit this button. There's Memorize. What Memorize will allow you to do is literally create a memorized transaction. Maybe you want on a monthly basis to have the same prepaid expense entry going through. That's a great use for this. So you can do Memorize and then have it run for 6 months until that prepaid expense is depleted. And then there's reverse, right? That is going to create the reversing entry. When you're creating accrual entries, this is exactly what you want to use, right? So when you make that initial accrual, you can then do the reverse and date it forward. So then you have that natural reversal. So then you have your print, pretty normal, attached file. If you do have some type of schedule or something that is supporting the reason for this entry or some type of reconciliation, you can attach it right here so then you have everything in one place. So finally, there's the hide list, which is going to hide this bottom portion. What that bottom portion shows you is basically any transactions or any entries that have happened in this time period. So you can see here, look at that. In all time, I only have 6 entries in my test server, but this is just showing what's happening. But maybe I go, hey, I need more space. Please hide that. So the other thing that I'm sure you noticed popped up was this little prepayment thing. So this was a customer prepayment that I was working for, but this was an auto-generated entry by QuickBooks. Essentially, I know that I manually made this because there's nothing here. Here, I know this prepayment is linked to a customer prepayment payment, and that generates through QuickBooks Desktop. It's just a way for me to quickly know, hey, what did that come through? Right? Because I don't want to delete anything that's a prepayment, because once that prepayment is applied to the actual, invoice for the customer completed work, QuickBooks is then going to reverse this entry on its own. So if I delete it or if I try to, one, QuickBooks probably won't let me, but also I'm going to throw my books out of balance. So the next up top, we have our reports. So we have our transaction history. So there's really no history on this one. Let me see if there's a there we go. So the transaction history will pull up literally the related data and the related transactions. So this generated from that customer prepayment, like I said, when I go to open this, um, these linked transactions are literally the transaction that generated this report. So if I want to see it, I can click Go To. It will bring me to that transaction. So then we have the transaction journal. What the transaction journal is literally the transactions within this journal. it's really just showing you the debit and the credit side. Again, another useful tool, and this is a report that you can customize and memorize if you want to keep a running list maybe of your manual entries or whatever it should be, but just another look at what's happening. So again, that transaction journal, right, shows us the actual, I know it matches this debit and credit side of the entry. It's a 1-to-1 right now, but if I do entries entered, so I can do it based off the entry date rather than the actual transaction date, this fiscal year to date, well, look at that. I now have all the entries being pulled out based off of the creation date rather than the accounting date, which is helpful in terms of auditing. If, let's say, an account goes out of balance because you forgot to lock out like your ending date for a period and someone was able to post or whatever it should be, but this will help you find discrepancies and things that are throwing off your reconciliations. So let's make a journal entry together. We're going to hit new. I'm going to date it for the end of March. This is going to be, we'll do a accrual entry. So I'm going to say that this is going to be for my accrued payroll, and I don't have this set up in my account yet, so I'm going to set it up. It's going to be a other current liability. Accrued payroll expenses. I am going to accrue for, we'll say my last 2 weeks of the payroll period, whatever it should be. We'll say, you know what? I've got to accrue $90,000 and I want my payroll expenses. So perfect. So I might throw a memo in to accrue for payroll period 4. And then I can hit save. Perfect. And now I'm going to go, oh my goodness. Now I need to reverse this entry, right? Because in April, that cash is going to flow out and I've already recognized the expense, right? Basic accrual accounting. So the way I'm going to do that is pretty simple. Just hit reverse. Look at that. It happened to bring it over for 4/1/25. We can see this is the reversing entry. It has then modified my memo to have the word reverse, which for me is super helpful. I love that. It creates some type of linkage, but also the entry number, it appended an R to the end of it. So if you create some type of naming cadence for your entry numbers, right, good journal entry sources, you now can pull reports that pull out all of your payrolls along with the reversals to figure out what's happening. It's a good way to be able to keep track and easily be able to trace transactions. So I'm going to hit save on it, and look at that. So now let's create a memorized transaction. Maybe, going back to that prepaid expenses, I have insurance that I pay 3 months in advance. And I know I'm going to recognize that expense for the next 3 months. There's no reason in me having to manually journal it for the next 3 months. I should get it to automatically generate by QuickBooks for me. So just like before, we're going to hit new, and we will do prepaid expense. I don't believe I have, oh, I do have a prepaid insurance account. Amazing. And we're going to say the account has, let's say, $300 in it that I need to recognize over the next 3 months, so $100 every month. So I'm looking to credit $100 and raise my insurance expense by $100 starting on 3/31/25. So first I'll hit save. So now I know for the month of March, right, I have my insurance expense covered, but I now need to do April and May. Well, there's two ways that we can do it. Either I can create a copy, which will literally create a copy of this transaction, which let's do now. Create a copy. A duplicate journal entry has been created, making any changes you need to and save the journal entry. If you want to duplicate the journal entry regularly, you may want to use memorized transactions. So it's more just saying, hey, we made a copy for you. So here's my copy, and I'm going to go, you know what, I want this for the end of April. And then I'll hit save. All right, so now I want to go, hey, let me just check quickly that March and April both posted. Well, that's where I can use that reports and the entries entered as of today, right? Look at that. I have my $100 coming out, with my dates of 3/31 and 4/30. So I go, awesome. those 2 months are covered. So then for the month of May, let's look at the other option of creating a memorized transaction. So what we'll do is we will go back. I will hit main in this top navigation on the last entry that I made, and I'm going to hit the word memorize. So then I am going to name my memorized transaction prepaid insurance. You can call it whatever you'd like. This is just for the sake of, you being able to easily identify it. So you can either have it pop up as an add to my reminders list, so QuickBooks will not automatically make the entry, have it not make a reminder for you, or have it automatically create the transaction for you without you having to manually approve it. So I want to automate the entry. I want this to happen monthly, starting on May 31st. And this is where I can say, hey, how many more times do I want this entry to be automatically created on a monthly basis? For me, I'm going to say 1. But let's say that you actually had 6 more months worth of prepaid insurance expenses you had to recognize where you go, hey, it's always going to match. Well, you just make that number 6. And then the next date will be 5/31. The date after that is 6/30, so on and so forth. And then once this number runs out, essentially QuickBooks stops making the entry, right? So it's eliminating the manual touches of needing to make 6 more months worth of journal entries. So the next is you can automate, or you can tell QuickBooks, hey, how many days in advance do I want you to make this entry? Do I want you to make it on 5/31/25? Or do I want you to make it a week before, so when I'm doing my closes or I'm starting to get ready to do my closes, I can start to review my journal entries that they're all there. So then all I have to do is hit OK, and that just became a memorized transaction in my QuickBooks. So if you ever do want to go check, hey, where are my memorized transactions, right? Where did that go? All you have to do is go to lists and memorize transaction list. And look at that, it's right here, and we can tell that it's manual journal entries because the type is general journal. And then if I want the detail on it or I want to edit it, all I have to do is double click. Oh, sorry, that brings me to the actual entry. All I have to do is hit edit memorize transaction, which you can use Control E for, or you can go to this memorize transaction dropdown and edit it. So now if I were to go to this reports in this entries entered today, I'm not going to see it on here, right? Because it's not going to generate until the 24th of May because that's how many days in advance I told it to be created. So I will not see it on this report until then. So the next thing in QuickBooks that always gets asked, or just like any accounting software, is, hey, how do I see the other side of an entry for something that wasn't a manual journal entry, right? Like a deposit, like a payment, like an invoice, yada, yada, yada. Well, there's a few ways we can do that. This is pretty simple in QuickBooks Desktop, but if you want to maybe go to your check register for any of them, we'll jump into one of them, but this is our check register for our bank account. Whenever you're in a register, though I know that the other, right, the register we went into is the other side of all these entries, the other thing you can do is always double click. If you double click into them, you can see what's happening. So this brought me to my transfer funds, but I can now hit journal and look at that. There's that transaction journal we saw before. The other thing you can do is you can show the splits if you want to see the detail here. So if you hit splits, yes, QuickBooks will then show you the full detail of that entry. Though again, the other side of that entry is whatever bank register that you're in, but you can always double click again from there and see what's happening. So then if I add something to the check register from here, it's actually automatically making these entries for me. So we're going to say on 4/30/25, I'm going to have an interest expense of $500 that's going to come out of this bank account. I'm going to record it, but now watch what happens when I double click this. There's the check detail behind it. But now I can see the bank account here and the interest expense here. This essentially is the journal entry. But again, I say, you know what? No, I really want to see it as a debit and credit side. I don't want to have to visually look at it. Well, all I have to do is go to reports and transaction journal. And look at that. There's my credit and my debit. And that function of going to the reports in the transaction journal is how you can see the back end of just about most transactions in QuickBooks Desktop. So let's say I go to create invoices, for example. I'll go to a random one, go to reports, show me that journal. Oh, look at that. There's all the entries associated with this. Not only does it have the actual sale recognition, but also the expense recognition of this invoice. So I can figure out, hey, what did this invoice do? And I can do that with all my transaction types. So this being able to see the transaction journal is not only really good for you reconciling, but also really good for you to understand what is the accounting that's being driven on the back end of QuickBooks Desktop to truly understand that chart of accounts, right? Accounting is accounting through and through, but debits are debits are always debits and credits are always credits. But let's be honest, accounting's always a little bit different in every company because that chart of accounts is made for them. Yeah, an inventory account is an inventory account, but you know, the way that inventory moves and the amount of transactions between retail and manufacturing are grossly different. So understanding what did this transaction generate and the business activity behind it is so important and so useful. But so that's a pretty quick description on, hey, how do I make manual journal entries, but also how do I find the backing of any of these transactions for, what it generated in terms of my accounting. Again, another basic video. I'm sure that, if you've been in QuickBooks Desktop, you know how to do all this, but it's very, to me, it's just necessary if you're new to it, to understand, right? How do I do this from a basic level? And this wouldn't be a complete tutorial package if I didn't do the basics too. All right. Well, if there's, I don't know, anything that you'd want to see or you have any questions on, please feel free to comment below. As always, I know these are not the most concise videos, but I just hope they're informative in nature and can help you understand your QuickBooks file and how to use it a little bit better to support your business.